Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolutely epic, almost unfathomable timeline of human prehistory. We're going to navigate all the way from the very first time our ancient ancestors struck two stones together, right up to the monumental invention of the written word. It's a wild journey spanning literally millions of years, and we're going to unpack the whole shebang right here. So let's start by defining exactly what we mean when we say prehistory. Well, it's a vast, almost incomprehensible timescale framed by two massive technological leaps. It kicks off roughly 3.3 million years ago with the first stone tools, and it ends when humans start recording their own histories using symbols and scripts. And, because there are absolutely zero written records from this era, we have to rely entirely on the material clues left behind. We're talking archaeological remains, ancient bones, and artifacts to really piece together the story of our species. It's kind of like a giant puzzle.
Here is our itinerary for the next 3.3 million years. First, the origins of humanity and tools. Second, cave paintings. Third, our shift from nomadism to sedentism. And finally, the invention of writing.
Now, to truly grasp the sheer gravity of this timeline, consider this number, 99%. It is just mind-blowing to think that the Stone Age encompasses a staggering 99% of all human history. Think about that for a second. Everything we consider modern history, from ancient Rome to that smartphone sitting in your pocket right now, fits into that remaining tiny 1%. Crazy, right? If you look at the dates here, notice the massive compression of time. It takes millions of years to go from basic stone tools to painting on cave walls. But then, the gap between the dawn of farming and the invention of writing is just a few thousand years. Human progress basically starts as this incredibly slow crawl, and then it turns into an absolute sprint. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, Origins of Humanity and Tools, or as I like to call it, the spark of physical innovation. Millions of years before modern humans even existed, early hominins at a site in modern-day Kenya did something absolutely incredible. They purposefully struck stones together. Now, this wasn't just random rock smashing. No, this was the intentional creation of tools to solve the really basic survival challenges of interacting with their environment. It's a total game changer, especially because these tools actually predate our genus entirely. So, the really crucial takeaway here is that this single, functional leap officially kicked off the Paleolithic period, better known as the Old Stone Age. It marks the absolute beginning of prehistoric human adaptation. From here, early humans would eventually learn to control fire, which, allowed them to cook food, stay warm, fend off predators, and eventually migrate straight out of Africa. But it all started with just a sharp edge on a broken stone. Moving right along to Section 2, Cave paintings, the first true expressions. Now, this era marks a profound shift toward cultural memory. By about 32,000 years before present, during the Aurignacian culture, we see something deeply moving. We start seeing parietal art, better known as cave paintings, beautifully captured in places like Chauvet Cave in France. For the very first time, humans weren't just reacting to their environment. They were observing it, reflecting on it, and actively recording their perceptions of the world around them. In this era, the Upper Paleolithic wasn't just about surviving the harsh, freezing climate of the Ice Age. It was a period of incredible cognitive blossoming. We actually start seeing organized settlements. We find intricate clay sculptures and, amazingly, musical instruments, like literal flutes made out of bone. Humans were organizing their societies, making music, and creating art. It really shows a level of behavioral modernity where language and sophisticated cognition were firmly taking root. This brings us to Section 3, From Nomadism to Sedentarism, the ultimate lifestyle shift. Think about this. For millions of years, humans and our ancestors were strictly nomadic hunter-gatherers. We followed the herds, we chased the seasonal plant life. Which poses a genuinely fascinating question. After millions of years of successful roaming, why on earth did we finally stop moving? Well, the old nomadic lifestyle relied on small, highly mobile, mostly egalitarian bands. Basically, you only owned what you could carry on your back. But the new sedentary lifestyle of the Neolithic farmer, that changed everything. It meant putting down roots, building permanent mud brick houses, and staying in one place year-round. And because they could finally store surplus food, populations absolutely boomed, which led to the first complex social structures, chiefdoms, and real social stratification. We call this massive transformation the Neolithic Revolution. It kicked off around 10,200 BCE in regions like the Middle East, and it provided the ultimate solution to food scarcity. How? Through the rapid, deliberate domestication of very specific plants and animals. Instead of hunting wild game and foraging, humans literally engineered their own food supply. They started cultivating incorn wheat and millet, and they tamed sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs. It actually all happened in a pretty rapid sequence. Following the retreat of the Pleistocene glaciers, the global climate warmed up. Humans took full advantage by domesticating those crops and animals we just talked about. But of course, this required them to stay right next to their fields and pastures, which naturally led to the establishment of permanent mud brick settlements. These sequential steps completely revolutionized human society, shifting us from small groups living at the mercy of nature to complex societies actively controlling it. And that leads perfectly into our final chapter, Section 4, the invention of writing, the technology that ends prehistory. This exact date, right around 3300 BCE, marks the appearance of proto-cuneiform in Sumer, Mesopotamia. And guys, this represents arguably the most important administrative breakthrough in all of human history. The entire shift from the Bronze Age to the very beginning of recorded history hinges entirely on this specific moment. Now here is a really surprising fact for you. Writing didn't emerge just because people wanted to write down myths or poetry or tell grand stories. Actually, scratch that. It's completely the opposite. Pictographic proto-writing was invented as a highly practical, absolutely vital tool for keeping track of resources. In these rapidly growing agricultural states, leaders needed a reliable way to tally up grain surpluses, track livestock, and you guessed it, collect taxes. Writing was, at its very core, invented for accounting. But while this specific technology eventually brought the prehistoric era to a close, we have to remember it was a very slow geographical process. Prehistory officially ended at vastly different times across the globe. For example, while written records popped up in Egypt around 3100 BCE, places like New Guinea or Australia didn't transition out of prehistory until way, way later, usually when Eurasian cultures arrived with their own writing systems. So history isn't just a single synchronized clock. It's more like a tapestry of different cultures developing at their own unique pace. So, as we wrap up this explainer of our deep past, it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to chew on. If the invention of clay tablets and stone inscriptions ended prehistory, how on earth will the historians of the future categorize our current era? With our endless, completely overwhelming digital footprint, are we actually living in a new kind of proto-history that future generations are going to struggle to decipher? Thank you so much for exploring this epic timeline with me today. Until next time, keep questioning the past.